Welcome to Maine, we're stretched to the bone. Prices keep rising, the paycheck stays prone. Inflation keeps knocking, won't leave us alone. They're selling the lie, groceries climbing, the gas tank is low. The bill's hitting harder than snow, but silence still blankets the truth. Where does it go? They're selling the lie. Housing is gridlocked from Portland to the county. Workers commute far past what feels soundly. Talk of solution comes yearly, not loudly. They're selling the lie. They're selling the lie. Say every voice counts, but watch who gets lifted. Some stories vanish, some get the spotlight shifted. Depends on what trends and what keeps them gifted. They're selling the lie. I won't believe them, I wanna believe, but truth's always stuck in between. Static and spin, drown the signal again. Nothing is what it seems. I wanna believe you, but every headline turns daylight into redesigned skies. Facts get twisted, context missing. We choke on the simplified alibis. Wanna believe you, but all I see is shadows where the answers should shine. The fact is fiction.
Welcome to the Muddy Waters Podcast, where Mainers tell their stories.
Good morning. Oh, good afternoon. I keep getting stuck on what time it is today for some reason. But good afternoon, Maine. This is Chuck Ellis, and I am the host of the Muddy Waters Podcast. Thank you for joining us. We exist to help the people of Maine better understand what's going on in our state. And we do that by bringing on guests who can share from their perspective what's going on. We tell stories that the mainstream media can't cancel and doesn't want to tell. They don't want out there because the mainstream media is a propaganda arm of the Democrat Party. And today we are fortunate to have with us candidate for House District 94 in Lewiston, Janet Beaudoin.
Hi, how are you, Chuck? Thanks for having me, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm very thankful that you were willing to, no, I shouldn't say willing. Obviously, you're a politician. Politicians, well, it's interesting is like, it seems like there are some politicians that love to get in front of the camera. And nationally, I think most of them do. But then you have other ones that are a little bit shy. But if you're running for office, you should want to get in front of a camera, generally speaking. And so, but anyway, but thank you. The point I'm trying to get at is thank you for coming on the podcast and taking the time and, all the other things that you do, being a school board member and, being willing to put your name up there and run for office in a really challenging district for Republicans there in Lewiston. So thank you so much for that. And I was telling you before, but wanted to say it live. It's just that for how Republicans tend to do in Republicans, as we know at this point, we're the low propensity voters where it's harder to get us out to vote, especially when, it's not a presidential, it's not even a general election, it's not even a primary, right? There's no school board budget to vote down. It's harder to get Republicans out to vote. And so we tend to, in special elections, perform below average, below what we tend to do in the general. And from my understanding, you unfortunately, we didn't get you across the finish line, but you fared far better than Republicans have in the general election in this last election cycle, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I did all right. I mean, obviously, yeah, I didn't win. I ended up losing by some absentee ballots. So, it was kind of expected, honestly. I went into this race, I wasn't delusional. The last time this race happened, well, it wasn't a special election, it was a general election, but the Democrat won by like 20 points. in my district, right?
Yep.
So going into this, I had no business winning this election, but I certainly tried as hard as I could to flip it. And I got really close. I mean, I lost by 4%, not 20%. So I got really close in this district.
Yeah, and that says a lot about, like, I think who you are as a candidate. Like, one of the things I've learned in my a short stint, eventually I'm gonna have to stop calling it a short stint. When you're over like 4 or 5 years in politics, I guess you've been around for a little while. But like I still think it's a short amount of time that I've been involved in Maine politics. One of the things I've learned is candidate quality really matters, right? And like, to me, this is evidence of how good of a candidate you are, that you're able
Thank
to
you.
get that many people out to vote for you, because like, that's literally the only reason they were showing up to vote, was to vote for you, right?
Mhm.
And so, like, especially Republicans who don't want to get out to vote, partly because Republicans are busy. I mean, they're running businesses. They're, taking their kids to sports. Like, right. Like, it's harder to get them out to vote than it is the Democrats, whose religion is trying to be in control so that they can force people to do what they think they should do. Right.
Right.
Like, and so I just want to congratulate you on that, because I think it's obviously that's a big part of why you were successful. But what else? So I should shut up now. And like, so what are your takeaways? Like, what did you learn through this process? And, outside of the fact that you knew that there was a good chance that it would be hard to win, like, what did you learn, and what comes next?
I learned a lot of lessons and really gained a whole different perspective after this election. So I guess first and foremost, I really want to give some shout outs to the people who helped me get as far as I got. And that does include the Maine GOP. I think that, they're not getting a lot of credit for how much they helped me. But Jim Dryerman was the chair of the Republican Party. He was involved in weekly meetings with me to talk about strategy and what the game plan was and how we were going to pull this out. I had Zach Lingley working directly with me. I had John Stevie working with me. Yep. There's just countless people that just had my back and literally were in contact with me every single week and helping me. And I mean, I even had former Governor Paul LePage doing everything in his power to try to get me this seat. I mean, he was there on election day with me, shaking hands for a few hours, greeting people. He was behind the scenes. He sent out text messages on my behalf. He wrote an endorsement letter on my behalf. So there was, I felt so much support from the Maine GOP. And I think the narrative that's circulating that it's the GOP's fault that I didn't win, I don't accept that narrative at all. It's not true at all. And beyond the Maine GOP, I also had gubernatorial campaigns that were in my corner helping me. And whether it was donations, endorsements, or, there was a lot of boots on the ground action from the Wessels team. And they were just incredible, like absolutely incredible. I can't say enough about, how many doors they knocked for me, how many phone calls they made for me. They were there all election day helping me, running numbers, chasing down absentee ballots, like just incredible the amount of support that I had. And, and the testament to that is I literally had people showing up on election day, shaking my hand saying, I forgot about this. It's good you sent somebody to knock on my door this morning. So if that doesn't prove that, door knocking, that boots on the ground grassroots from the Wessels campaign, like if that doesn't prove that it works, like I don't know what other proof there is. I mean, they were absolutely incredible. And also the David Jones campaign, they came out big for me in more ways than one. And David Jones also came to the polls on election day and shook hands for a few hours. And I really felt the support from the Republican Party, and I just want to make that super clear. I did not lose because of a lack of support from the Republicans. At the end of the day, I lost because we don't have a good absentee ballot game. We just don't, as a Republican Party. And I can start going into that now. Did you have a question? Sorry.
No, I think that
okay.
would be great, because I think this is one of the biggest areas of opportunity for us, and one of the things that we have to get we have to get going. We have to do if like, again, they're doing it. And we have some elections where we're losing by less than 10 votes. Like in this case, what were you lost by like 60 votes, right?
It turned out to be 69 absentee ballots.
69. 69. Yeah. And so like again, that's not like you get yeah, I mean it's not hard to make up if you can play that game well. We can make that up. And I think when we look at things statewide, I think we're going to need this if we're going to be able to win, the governor's race, and as well as some of these House and Senate races. If we can get good at this, we can overcome the Democrats. I really believe that we can win House, Senate, and the governor's race if, all other things being equal, if we can get this down. So like, I'd love you to go into that.
Yeah. So, going into election day, I knew the absentee count, and I knew that, I was able to look at the rolls and see that, there were way more Democrats that had taken out absentee ballots than Republicans, and a pretty good chunk of unenrolls. So I knew going into election day, like I had to get people there. I had to get them out to vote. And I had a little bit of a plan going into this election. You don't have a lot of time. Like this was a whirlwind, right? It was 2 months. My head was spinning for 2 months. It happened so quickly. And I really had a plan that I was going to knock doors and I was going to ask people straight up, like, hey, can I get you an absentee ballot? Right? Like that was kind of my plan. But I can't do that as a candidate. I'm not allowed to get you an absentee ballot. And, I've learned a lot of lessons with this. So people have to request their own absentee ballots unless you're a third party, and a third party consists of someone, I believe, that's a notary. So I don't know how the Democrats do it, but on the Republican side, my plan kind of fell apart as far as I wanted to get more people to vote absentee. So going into this election, I now do have a plan, and I have someone working on it. So we're going to have direct links right to the Secretary of State's website. I am going to have a QR code on all of my stuff moving forward. So you can just scan the QR code, go to the Secretary of State's website, and request an absentee ballot. I've said, there was like 2,200 Republicans in my district. And unfortunately, a lot of people in Lewiston do not know which district they live in. So on election day, I would say there were around 400 people that showed up to vote for me that could not vote for me and were turned away. Yeah. And that was heartbreaking. It was really heartbreaking. People came out, they were so excited to shake my hand. They were excited to meet Governor LePage. And they were there to vote for me, and they were just so excited. And just a general, like, I don't mean to sound negative, but just they didn't have a great candidate on the Democrat side, right? He is not a popular person in this city. People do not like this man. And so many people showed up and they were like, you need to get him out of here. We don't want him representing us. We're here to vote for you. Like, they were so excited. And then they were turned away because they didn't live in my district. So that happened all day long. And I felt really bad about that. But I have a plan. I'm, going forward for this general election. I'm literally going to talk to as many people as I can, and I'm going to have them request an absentee ballot, like right in front of me. Like, here's the QR code. Please scan this. Please request your absentee ballot. Life is busy. Republicans are busy people. We work, we own businesses. Not to say that Democrats don't, but they just have a better system in place. They get to pay NGOs to go out and do all of this legwork for them and get people to request their absentee ballots. And the Republicans don't have that. I don't know why we're not prepared in that sense, but we're just not. So that's going to be my ground game moving forward, is just to get as many Republicans as possible to vote absentee in this next election. So there's no excuses when it comes to, oh, I forgot, or I was busy, or I was out of town, I was on vacation. Like, nope. Of the 2,200 Republicans in Lewiston, in my district, less than 300 of them showed up to vote. So that is why I'm not sitting in Augusta right now. And, it's a hard pill to swallow. And I don't
So
want to, I don't want to blame them. I don't want to blame the voter for not voting, but it's kind of what happened. So we have to find another way. We have to find a way to encourage people to vote from home. If you're not going to leave your home, vote from home. It's super easy. Whether you like absentee voting or not, it really doesn't matter. It is how our elections are determined. And the only way that we, moving forward, are able to gain control and to bring some common sense back to elections and like voter ID and, maybe switching up. I mean, I don't want to say like switching up absentee voting, but like, you know, make it what it was intended for, people who are snowbirds who are down in Florida during election times but still live in this area, or people who are sick, or people who are disabled. Like, those are the people that should be voting absentee, right? And if we can get control of the House, if we can get control of the Senate, if we can get control in the governor's office again, we can change some laws and make things more reasonable in this state. But not the way that we're doing things right now. We won't win.
Well, and that's where, like, I think there are a lot of things that we need to do better. And I say that not to be critical of the party, but just to speak truth, right? Like, the reality is we have opportunity, right? And if we ignore the opportunity and just say we're doing great, then we're not going to make the adjustments that we need to make. And Republicans, if you're sitting there and you're like, I just like to vote on election day, think and ask yourself if there's ever been an election you missed because you like that, because something came up and it put you in a position where you couldn't vote. I think there's a lot of people who fall into this category. They don't make a plan to vote. They're just like, I'm going to vote on election day. And then election day comes and they realize, wow, I've got a really busy day. I don't know where I'm going to fit that in. I mean, this has happened to me before I was involved in politics. I still like to vote. And I primarily just voted, by the way, in presidential elections. I didn't go to the other ones. I think I did vote in one LePage. I think his re-election bid, I voted for him there. I remember that was probably my first non-presidential election, but I missed the Mitt Romney presidential election because I didn't have a plan. I was put in a position one night where I had three things that I could do. And I chose to eat and do Bible study, and because I could do two, but I couldn't do all three, and vote was the third one. And arguments could be made. Fortunately, my vote for Mitt Romney would not have changed the outcome of that election. But the point is, it might have impacted some of the elections down the ticket, because those are much more important and much tighter and closer. And so, anyway, I've had an experience where I didn't vote because I didn't I didn't make plans. But making sure to make a plan to vote. But and I do think one of the other challenges we have as Republicans is we don't like absentee ballots voting. So we don't want to use it. And it's like, I get where we're coming from here, but this is the current system. The other side is using it. Do we want to just be like, I'm against it, and so since I'm against it, I'm not going to use it, and ensure that we lose? Right? Like, because that's the reality. Like, it's like playing, you're going into a fight with your arms tied behind your back. Yep. I mean, you're going to lose, right? So we have to use the tools that are available to us. Trump had to do this in 2024, right? This is what he did. Like, in the swing state, they had really aggressive games to use the current laws appropriately under the current system in order to make sure we got the most votes, in order to win those swing states, in order to save our republic from what would have been a Kamala Harris presidency, which would have been terrible.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine?
Right? I cannot. Like, people can have their complaints with Trump, but like that was the alternative, and it was terrible. So, but here in the state of Maine, it's the same thing, right? We have to use the tactics that we know work, which is everything that we can to legally get people out to vote. The other side is going to go beyond legal. We know that they're going to have some non-citizens voting. Like the data, we have data that proves that it's happening, right? As exposed by the Maine Wire, and I had a couple of people talk about some things on the podcast here about their own things that they saw. one particularly in Lewiston, where people who are non-citizens were getting ballots in the mail, right? And so we know that they're not just gonna follow the law. They're also likely, based on what we've seen and the evidence we have, they're gonna go beyond that. We have to at least take advantage up to the legal means that we can to ensure that we win elections. We have to get over ourselves, and you call it our principles, but like being against something and not being unwilling to use something that helps you, is silly. Again, as you said, let's win and let's change it to make it so that you can only absentee vote if you're going to be out of town for some reason. You have to be able to prove that you're sick, you're injured, you're unable to drive, whatever it is. You're in the military and you're at, like, these are situations that I think the idea of absentee voting was intended for, and I think we should make sure that those people have the ability to vote, but we need to not create a loophole where nefarious things can and likely do happen. And so anyway, I think that you're absolutely right on that, and we need to do better. And I
don't want to I don't want to give away too many campaign secrets, right? But one of the things that was nailed into my head was, don't call it absentee voting. Call it early voting. And so I did.
Yeah.
And I don't know, if you paid attention to any of my posts, I talked about early voting. Get out and vote early. Go to City Hall and vote early. I mean, that is still a form of absentee voting, right? But I wasn't supposed to say it like that, because we have a whole party of people who just despise the idea of absentee voting. And I get it. I don't like it any more than anybody else. But it's fair game, right? And it's being used against us. And that is how Democrats win elections, especially in Lewiston. It's absentee voting. So if we can't figure out how to beat them, we need to join them so we can beat them, right? Can't beat them, join them. So that's where my whole mindset is now, is I have to get people to absentee vote, because it's the only way I'm going to win. On election day, when they read off the voter rolls, there were two different voter rolls that came out of the machines. There was one machine that was just day of voting, and there was one machine that they put the absentee ballots through. And they did that throughout the day. There was a whole process with it. And I did observe how they did it. Everything was legit. I do give credit to our city clerk. Everything went very smoothly on election day. There were no issues with absentee ballots. But when she read off that first voter roll, which was day of, I only beat him by 22. And it felt like more being there, being present, shaking hands, giving hugs, talking to people. It felt like more than 22 people voted for me over Scott, but that wasn't the reality of it. And as soon as I heard that number, I knew I was toast, because there was no way I beat him with absentees. So if any Republicans are going to win in the city of Lewiston in November, and I mean any, we all need to be on the same page, and we all need to be out there getting people to absentee vote. And that is the message that I have. That is the perspective that I've gained from this last election.
Yeah, and if you're there at home and you're like, I would love to be able to help in some way, the number one thing that I would recommend that you do is go out and get your notary. If you're, as notary publics, you can actually help people get request and receive, and then you can also pick up and deliver their absentee votes. These are ways that we can bank votes, specifically with low propensity voters who we know are conservative, and or we can get to vote for people like Janet, right? Janet Beaudoin, that is, not that other,
not the other Janet. Right.
But yeah, we can get people out to vote for good candidates. We can get them to vote for the right people. We can actually, bank more votes, and we need to do that. So if you're thinking, I want to be able to be as useful as possible, I would recommend that you go out and get your notary, because it gives you a little bit more flexibility and, to being able to help. Because if you don't have your notary, you can't collect somebody's mail-in ballot or mail-in or whatever it is, absentee ballot or early voting. You can't do that. You can't collect it yourself. They can still mail it in, obviously, But one of the ways that we bank it is we know that we help them request it. We know that they've requested it, and then we go back and we help them make sure they get it filled out, and then we return it for them. If we have a notary, we can do that we can have up to 5 filled out ballots on us at a time as notaries. So I highly recommend that. I'm a notary, and this is one of the things that we can do on top of just encouraging people to do early voting. I'll share a story from, what election was it? I think it was the 2024 election. Yeah. So I had a neighbor who was like willing to vote, for the right candidates, but she was like, she hadn't voted in a while. She was really nervous about it. She didn't know what to do. And I was like, knowing especially that I would be busy on election day, and knowing that who knows, like sometimes things come up with her and she gets busy and she's like not around, and she, I was like, hey, what about this day? Can we go down to town hall? And she, we went, I prepped her, like, cause she's nervous about wanted to know what all the questions were ahead of time so she could make sure she was ready. I helped her with all that. We showed up, she voted, I voted. Now she's comfortable with early voting. In this last election, she just went in and did it. She just wanted some advice from me on who to vote for or what to vote for. I guess it was more likely what it was. I think there were some who to vote for us, actually, because we had some city council and school board stuff here in Westbrook. And so, like, you can help one of your friends or neighbors get out to vote. And, I had to get over the fact that I like to vote on election day, but because I had an opportunity to get my neighbor out, I voted early because that meant 2 votes instead of just my 1. Right. And so there are things that we can do to help, with that. So whether it's becoming a notary for absentee or just talking to your neighbors, I think we sometimes I think in a lot of ways we've gotten to this place as conservatives where we speak and we talk to people maybe, and we expect them to go out and do the right thing. But we don't kind of go that extra mile of saying, okay, when are you going to go do it? Let's go do it together. Right. And I think in general, we need to be better about communicating with our friends and neighbors and helping people understand there's a lot of people in the middle who are good people who want good stuff, but they're not educated and they're not going to hear the truth from the mainstream media. And they're so busy that if they're doing anything other than talking to their friends and neighbors, they're not paying attention to the main wire. They're not researching. We need to be the voice that gets the truth in front of them, which is part of the reason this podcast exists, to give you some tools at home where you can take some stuff from this. You can take clips and send them to your friends and neighbors and stuff like that to help them understand what's really going on in our world, to encourage them to know, how to vote and what they can do. Right. But we need to be the so to speak, I'm a Christian, so I'm always thinking, well, I've got so many of those things stuck in my head. We need hands and feet, we'll say, of the party and of the candidates. We need to be out there. We can't expect the fact that we know that we're right and that policy wise we've got the right stuff. And yes, the Democrats are bad. We can't expect that that's going to be enough to get people to go out and do the right thing, because in addition to the mainstream media and the constant drip there, also in that, if you pay attention to the TV shows and the movies that are out there, there's a drip there too. They're getting them there. And then they are absolutely 100% without a doubt having conversations with their friends and neighbors. And they're not afraid to make people feel really uncomfortable if they disagree with them. I'm just asking you to have conversations, not make people feel really uncomfortable, not go to the degree that the Democrats are going, but actually engage with people and try and help them understand, not preach to them, right? But try to help them understand what's really going on and help make sure that they're educated and they know that there are alternative sources of information.
Yep. And this November election is a huge election. We have gubernatorial, we've got Congress, we have House reps, we have Senate reps, we have school committee, we have city council, we have a mayor. We have so much on the ballot.
Wait,
in
you
Lewiston.
guys have an opportunity to get rid of Shalane?
Shalene, yeah.
Ooh, Shalene,
Yeah.
whatever the heck it is.
Yeah,
Carl.
yeah. This is a big election in Lewiston. And so, obviously voter turnout's going to be low in a special election in the middle of February. We knew that going into it. And we're going to have way more of a turnout in November. We just need to make sure that Republicans really, really understand what's at stake here. You have to get out and vote in November. There's no way around it. There's so much on the line.
Yeah. And the other thing that I would say with that is like, one of the reasons that this podcast exists again too is
Mm,
that local is so much more important than national, in the sense that, like,
mm,
I'm not saying national politics are not important. I'm not saying that, for instance, the national deficit and the existential crisis that is doesn't impact us here in the state of Maine. It absolutely does. But
yeah.
where can you have the most impact? You can have the most impact in your backyard. And unfortunately, far too many of us are doing exactly what the mainstream media wants us to do. And we're talking
Yeah.
about Donald Trump, and we're talking about the things that he's doing to our friends and neighbors, instead of talking about things where there are some of your friends and neighbors that will never accept Donald Trump, period.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter how many times you tell them how amazing he is. They're not going to accept him, right? They may accept Janet, right?
Yeah.
They may be able to get out and vote for Janet. They might be
Yeah.
able to vote for some of these other candidates. But if all we ever do is talk about this national stuff that we know that a lot of people don't like, and it doesn't matter, nobody can vote for Donald Trump again. By the way, he's
Mm-mm.
he's
No,
done
he's
after
termed
this
out.
this
Yeah.
this election cycle, right?
He
So
jokes about it, but we
he
all know
does.
it's not true. Like,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
just to set people off. It's funny.
Absolutely, absolutely. I
Yeah.
mean, and so, like, this is the reality. Like, we don't need to defend him. We don't need to praise him. He's not running again. What we
Mhm.
do need is to win here in the state of Maine. And so we need to
Mhm.
focus on Maine issues. We need to turn our friends and neighbors not to what Trump's doing, but to what's happening here in our state, what local reps are doing. Get yourself educated on how your local rep is voting, and tell your neighbors, hey, did you know that they're voting against protecting children, in this way or that way? Because there's a bunch of different ways in which they're not protecting children. They're voting in favor of boys and girls sports. They're, all these things that are happening that we can see, and you can let your friends and neighbors know about it. We need to focus on that and not about what's going on in the national, because
Absolutely.
it's not going to help us, and it's also not something that we can have a significant impact on anyway.
Yeah.
Where you can
No,
have a
it's so
big
true.
impact. Again, 70 more people had showed up to vote. You would have won. Now, what's
Mm.
one of the questions I have too is, like, I think you said that you got that about 300 Republicans showed up to vote. How many votes did you get total?
500 something. I don't
So
know
you
the
got,
exact number. Like 503, I think.
so you got a lot of independent voters. Independent voters
I
almost
did.
made up half, about 40%. It sounds like.
I did. And I
of your
flipped some
votes.
Democrats too. And I know I flipped some Democrats.
Yeah.
So yeah, like when I said, like, they put up a terrible candidate, they really did. And it was
Yep.
funny to watch the election play out and watch, like, the job that I do some property management stuff, and I sort mail and deliver mail to people that live in the buildings that I take care of. And I saw a lot of the Democratic mailers that came out. And I will say the majority of the mailers sent out by the Democratic Party didn't even mention their candidate's name. It wasn't about him at all. It was about discrediting me, and it was about keeping their thin majority in Augusta. And 99% of those mailers didn't mention a word about who their candidate was. So I think that says a lot. I don't think there was anything that went out from the Republicans at all that didn't mention me or have a photograph of me, or it was about electing me. It wasn't about keeping or trying to gain a majority, which obviously we weren't going to gain a majority anyway. We would have just sort of balanced it out a little bit in Augusta, and unfortunately we weren't able to do that this time. But really, I look at it like this: all Scott won was 6 weeks up in Augusta to kind of learn the ropes, and be a vote, obviously. And he gained that little I next to his name for the November election. But the incumbent.
Incumbent. I thought you were saying
Incumbent.
independent. The
No,
unenrolled. No.
incumbent.
Yeah, okay.
He gained that title, which is all well and good. But the reality of the situation is, right now, starting tonight, is our first budget meeting for our school committee. He is on the school committee as the city council rep. He has the budget starting with the city council, and he is now up in Augusta, I don't know, 30 plus hours a week. So he is a busy guy right now. And I have so much time to spend doing the things that I need to do and listening to people in this city, and finding ways to pull this election off in November. I just have all the time in the world right now to figure this out. So I really have a positive outlook with this. Like I understand, like, it didn't play out in my favor for this special election, but I have a lot of confidence going into November. I really think that, we can do this.
Awesome. Well, I'm
Mhm.
I'm very excited to see what happens in November. Obviously, you're going to build on what you've done in this election and add to it some stuff around early voting, absentee voting, etc.
Mhm.
So I'm excited to see what happens, and I appreciate your perspective and everything that you've done and everything that you're going to do. I think you've done, like I said, I think you've done a great job, and I look
Thank you.
forward to seeing what happens very soon, and I guess very soon in November. But we really need to get terrible candidates like like Scott out of Maine politics if we can. It's interesting that this guy is essentially on the school board, on the city council, and a state rep, and it just seems like that's not what we should want
A little
as a people.
conflicty, right?
Yeah,
A little
there's
conflicty.
well, one of the
Yeah.
things you do as part of the state committee, state office, is you negotiate like teachers, something to do with like with the teachers union at some level.
Mhm.
So as a school board, on the school board side, you're supposed to be representing the city, and so you're kind of representing both sides when you're in that. That's one area, but there's also just the reality that like, how can you be an expert in all of those fields and focus all your time? But also, the other thing that I would say is obviously if you get elected, this is what the people want, but like, I think we should have more diverse. Personally, it would be better if we had more diverse representation, and we could have people that are specifically focused on what they're specifically focused on. Hard to be, hyper focused on being on the school board and city council when you're up in Augusta, and vice
Mhm.
versa. And again, there are those internal conflicts, if not actual conflicts of interest. And so that seems problematic. And for that reason alone, you should consider voting for Janet in November. But yeah, so, well, I look forward, like I said, I look forward to seeing what happens. How can people support you? If they're in Lewiston, Auburn, how can they connect with you so that they can help you with your campaign? And then how can they financially support you?
Yeah, so a few things. I am running traditionally again for this election. I did traditional for the special election. I don't even think there was an opportunity to run clean because it happened so quickly. But I've gained a lot of momentum, and I am going to continue with the traditional run. So if you would like to donate, I absolutely need as much help as I can get going into November. There's so much awareness I need to spread out in this community. So you can go to Beaudoinforme.com. It's BEAUDOINFORME.com. And there is a link there to donate. My email address is also on there. It's beaudoinforrepresentative@gmail.com. If you're interested in a lawn sign, if you're interested in joining some sort of boots on the ground, door knocking, anything at all, you can reach out to me that way, and I'll take all the support and help that I can get. That would be so helpful. And I also, I'm going to continue, hopefully, to be teamed up with William Austin from the Wessels campaign, and he does some amazing things with the boots on the ground, and he is so willing to come to Lewiston and help out all the candidates here. And Lewiston's an important city. This is the second biggest city in the state. And it's important for gubernatorial candidates to realize, like, if you want to win on election day in November, you need to win Lewiston. It's just one of those things. You have to win Lewiston. Paul LePage,
You at
he did
least
it.
need to do better.
Yeah, you need to do better in Lewiston. So, coming here and, I know I'm just a House candidate, right? I'm not a gubernatorial candidate, but coming here and partnering with me and knocking doors with me, like, it's only going to help your campaign. And we have just announced Rin Soul. I don't know if you recognize that name. She was our Ward 5 city councilor, who unfortunately lost to Ayman Osman. She has just announced a Senate run here in Lewiston. So she is running for Senate. I think it's like 21. I don't know the exact number. Don't quote me. But I think it's like Senate District 21 or something here in Lewiston, Peggy Rotundo's seat. And so we've got Rin running. And so, things are looking up. We have some good candidates coming out of Lewiston, and we certainly need as much help as we can get here. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's awesome. Really exciting stuff. Good to see. And I think you're right. I think one of the things that I think candidates should do is work together and hit doors together. So yeah,
Absolutely.
Maybe I should reach out to some gubernatorial candidates and encourage
It benefits
them to
everyone.
do some doors with you down there in Lewiston. So yeah, be great.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much for all you're doing, and thank you for taking the time to
Yes.
come on. And thanks everybody for watching. Again, pay attention to the shorts that will come out of this. Like, share, subscribe. If you know of any other candidates that are running in November, I would encourage them to consider, coming on. This is a great opportunity to create some content that you'll be able to use for your campaign. You can take little clips from it and use that to advertise, or just get out there in the social media space. Again, I think doors and doors are a way, obviously, to reach people. But I will say, social media, I am continually running into people who are like, making that I don't expect to be people who would be watching or seeing stuff related to the podcast who have. And so a lot of people, social media has a place. And so it's important to capitalize and do whatever we can with it, but we can't, not as a replacement for doors and phones and all that other kind of stuff, because when you can get in front of a live person and have a conversation with a human being, that's much more valuable than seeing a reel. But there is value in the reels, if that makes sense. So
absolutely,
we've got to use all the tools at our disposal. It's just part of again, another part of the reason we exist here. So thank you all again. And thank you again, Janet.